On the night of June 9, 1912, in the small town of Villisca, Iowa, 8 people went to sleep. None of them woke up. Josiah Moore, his wife Sarah, their 4 children, and 2 young girls who had stayed the night as guests. They were found the next morning by a neighbor. Every single one of them had been killed with an axe, in their beds, while they slept. The windows were covered from the inside. The mirrors were draped with cloth. A piece of bacon sat on the floor next to the axe. The killer had spent the entire night in that house, moving through the rooms, watching them sleep, before disappearing into the darkness. He was never convicted. He may have killed again. And the house on East 2nd Street in Villisca, Iowa, still stands today. This is Unresolved. Villisca in 1912 was the kind of town where nobody locked their doors. Population just over 2,000. A tight-knit farming community in southwest Iowa where everyone knew everyone. Where children played freely and neighbors looked out for each other without being asked. Josiah Moore was a successful businessman. He owned an implement store in town and was well respected. His wife, Sarah, was known for her warmth and generosity. They had 4 children, Herman, Catherine, Boyd, and Paul, ages ranging from 5 to 11. On the evening of June 9th, the Moore family attended a children's program at the local Presbyterian church. 2 of Catherine's friends, Lena and Ina Stillinger, aged 8 and 12, came home with them to spend the night. It was supposed to be an ordinary sleepover. By the time the sun rose on June 10th, all 8 of them were dead. The next morning, a neighbor named Mary Peckham noticed something wrong. The Moore house was silent, unusually silent. No movement, no smoke from the kitchen chimney. The chickens had not been fed. She knocked on the door. No answer. She tried the door. It was locked, unusual for that neighborhood at that time. She called Josiah Moore's brother, Ross. He had a key. What he found inside that house has been described by everyone who has studied this case as one of the most disturbing crime scenes in American history. Every victim had been killed in their bed. Every victim had been struck multiple times with an axe. The youngest victim, 5-year-old Paul Moore, showed signs of having briefly woken up during the attack. But what disturbed investigators most was not the violence itself. It was the deliberateness of everything else. Every window in the house had been covered, with clothing, with curtains, with whatever was available, from the inside. The mirrors in the house had been draped with cloth. A 2-pound slab of bacon had been taken from the icebox and left on the floor next to the murder weapon. A kerosene lamp had been moved from its usual place and left at the foot of the bed where the Stillinger girls were found. This was not a frantic crime of passion. This was methodical, deliberate, planned, and the killer had spent hours in that house after the murders, eating, resting, moving quietly through the rooms, before leaving as dawn approached. What followed was an investigation that lasted years and ultimately convicted nobody. 3 men became primary suspects. The first was Frank Fernando Jones, a state senator and former employer of Josiah Moore. The 2 men had a bitter business dispute. Some investigators believed Jones had hired someone to kill Moore. He was never charged. The second was a traveling minister named Reverend George Kelly. He had been in Villisca the night of the murders and left on the first train the following morning. He was arrested twice, tried twice, and acquitted both times. During his second trial, he confessed to the murders. Then he recanted. Then he confessed again. His confessions were inconsistent. His mental state was questionable. The jury did not believe him. He was released. He died in 1930. The third suspect, and the one that many modern investigators find most compelling, was a man named Henry Lee Moore. No relation to the family. Henry Lee Moore was a serial killer. He had murdered his grandmother and mother with an axe in Missouri just months after the Villisca killings. He was convicted of those murders and sentenced to life in prison. Investigators who studied the Villisca case noted striking similarities between his known crimes and the events of June 9th. the method, the covered windows, the deliberate staging. Henry Lee Moore died in prison in 1952. He never confessed to Villisca. There are details in this case that have never been fully explained. The covered windows. Why would a killer take the time to cover every window in the house after committing 8 murders? The most common theory is that he did not want anyone passing outside to see light or movement inside. But it also suggests a level of calmness and deliberateness that is profoundly unsettling. The draped mirrors. In some religious traditions, mirrors are covered after a death to prevent the soul of the deceased from being trapped. Whether this had meaning to the killer, or whether it was intended to confuse investigators, has never been determined. The bacon. This detail has never been explained. A slab of raw bacon removed from the icebox and placed next to the murder weapon. No theory has ever adequately accounted for it. Some investigators believe it was food the killer intended to take with him. Others believe it was deliberate staging, a message, or a signature. The lamp. The kerosene lamp moved to the foot of the Stillinger girl's bed. Why? Was it moved before or after the murders? Was the killer using it to see by while he worked? Or was it placed there afterward, deliberately, for reasons nobody has ever understood? And finally, the sightings. In the weeks and months following the Villisca murders, similar axe murders occurred in other towns across the Midwest. Colorado Springs, Paola, Kansas, a pattern that some investigators have attributed to a single traveling killer, moving from town to town, killing entire families in their sleep. The Villisca axe murderer may not have stopped at Villisca. The house on East 2nd Street still stands. It has been preserved, nearly exactly as it was on the morning of June 10, 1912. The furniture is period appropriate. The rooms are set up as they were that night. It is open for tours during the day. And at night, for those who want to, you can rent the entire house and spend the night inside. Hundreds of people have done exactly that. Many of them have reported things, voices, footsteps, objects moving, the feeling of being watched in rooms that are empty. Whether you believe in such things or not, there is something undeniable about standing in that house, in the room where the children slept, looking at the bed where they died, knowing that the man who killed them walked through this exact space, stood in this exact spot, watched, and was never brought to justice. The families of the 8 victims have never received answers. Their descendants, some of whom still live in Iowa, have spent lifetimes wondering. Josiah Moore was 43 years old. Sarah was 39. Herman was 11. Catherine was 10. Boyd was 7. Paul was 5. Lena Stillinger was 12. Ina was 8. 8 people. One night, no justice. After more than a century, 3 theories dominate. Theory 1. Reverend George Kelly was guilty. His confessions, however inconsistent, contained details that only the killer could have known. His presence in Villisca that night and his departure the following morning placed him at the scene. Supporters of this theory believe the jury made a catastrophic error. Theory 2. Henry Lee Moore was responsible. A traveling killer who targeted entire families with an axe, whose known crimes bear an unmistakable resemblance to what happened in Villisca. This theory is supported by behavioral analysis but cannot be proven without a confession that never came. Theory 3. Frank Jones hired someone. A contract killing motivated by a business dispute that went catastrophically wrong, or perhaps went exactly as planned. This theory has the least direct evidence but has never been fully dismissed. One of these men, or someone else entirely, walked into that house on the night of June 9, 1912. They killed 8 people. They covered the windows so nobody could see inside. They draped the mirrors. They left a piece of bacon on the floor. And then they walked out of Villisca, Iowa, and were never held accountable for what they did. Not then, not ever. This case remains unresolved. The house is still there if you ever want to visit. Room 10, where the Stillinger girls were found, is said to be the most active. Whether you believe that or not, their story deserves to be remembered. What do you think happened that night in Villisca? Leave your theory below. Subscribe to Unresolved. New case every week. I'm Unresolved, and we're just getting started.